your hips down behind your heels. If that's too tight a space to come down into this very narrow squat, then you might need to walk your feet farther forward. This is a good preparation for high crow. So it's a much narrower squat than what we're used to doing with the feet towards the edges of the mat, wider or as wide as the hips, and angled outwards. With this, you're working with your feet parallel to each other and using your hands on the outer edges of your knees to help bring your knees in line with your feet. And see if you can play for a breath or so here to find that alignment of your knees over your feet and yet to press the outer edges of your feet down so you keep your inner arches lifted. This might, again, be quite intense and a little bit too much for your body, so if you need to, take your feet farther out or work with a wider squat. Once you have your back against the wall, you have some sense of stability. Bring your upper arms onto the top of your knees and press through the heels of your hands as you draw your fingers back. And notice how that action tends to lock your elbows. So instead of your elbows rolling down towards the floor, towards your thighs, roll them out towards the side edges of the mat. And then use your arms, the backs of your arms on your knees, to draw your rib cage up, to traction yourself up out of the ground, and to slide your shoulder blades back onto your back. One more breath in here. And then use your exhale to bring your legs out in front, and we'll stretch them out. This is the simple sitting posture of Dandasana, staff pose. We're using the wall here for feedback. What we're prioritizing is the back more than the legs, just like when we do this on the mat without the wall. So find however much bend in your knees you need to have so that you feel your low back is not rounded into the wall. You can slide your fingers in between your sacrum, your low back, and the wall. And then even if you have your knees bent, and don't worry about how much you have your knees bent, start with where you are. So even if they're bent, draw your toes back and look to see that your big toes and your little toes are squared with one another and they're above your heels. And then you can play with starting to stretch your legs out, with pressing through the soles of your feet to feel where's the length of your legs that doesn't round your low back into the wall. When you get to wherever that edge is, meaning you can breathe into it, then if you want to, you can take your arms up overhead, or you can keep them down by your sides and push the ground away. If you take your arms overhead, be sure that your shoulders stay broad on your back. And notice how your low ribs want to tuck out. So use the wall again for feedback to tuck your low ribs in towards your back, in towards the wall, so that the opening of your arms is coming from your shoulder joints more than from your mid-spine. See if you can feel, as you stay here for a breath or so in Dandasana, either arms by your sides or overhead, that you're pressing down through your sits bones, through the backs of your legs, and out through the soles of your feet to leverage your spine up out of the ground. Notice how you connect to the wall behind you and feel that it's even left to right. Give that one more breath in, and as you exhale, if your arms are overhead, release them down. Soften your legs. Turn your side body towards the wall. Doesn't matter which side, but if you want to follow me, turn your right side towards the wall and snuggle right up next to the wall. Have your block within reach and ready for you. And then once you're right up next to the wall, bring your right hand behind you, or whatever arm is closest to the wall, bring it behind you, and use the other hand to push the floor away and to swing your legs up the wall. By coming up this way, you should be able to come down onto your back with your legs up the wall and have your butt right next to the wall. But you may need to use your arm strength or wiggle your way in towards the wall so that you can feel your butt cheeks against the wall. We're going to do a similar kind of awareness, similar posture to what you just did, but a different relationship to the wall and the floor. So you have your legs against the wall and your back against the floor. And if you can, finagle the block up so that it's on the soles of your feet. And using the block to give some feedback to your feet so that you can feel that they're evenly stretched into the block. Similar idea as when you're on the ground, you may need to bend your knees a little bit. Once you've found where your sits bones are against the wall, the backs of your legs are against the wall, the block is up on your feet, which may take a bit of time to find, and your feet are engaged evenly into the block. Then see if you can find a little bit more of your tailbone tilting towards the floor so that you find that slight curve of your low back away from the floor. Don't overdo it so that you strain your low back, but see if you can feel where that's a comfortable curve in your low back. And then if it works for your shoulders, take your arms up overhead. Notice how your low ribs want to lift away from the ground. See if you can use your abdominal strength to tuck your low ribs down a little bit. Notice what you feel in your shoulders. And reach long through your elbows and through your fingers without crowding your neck. And try turning your palms to face each other so you have your thumbs and first fingers on the ground more than the backs of your hands. And then use the feedback system of the wall and the floor to feel for evenness left to right in your body, through your legs, along your spine, and into your shoulders and arms. If it doesn't work for your shoulders to have your arms overhead, have them out to the sides or by your sides. Give that one more breath. Use your exhale to bend your knees. And as you bend your knees, bring the soles of your feet to the wall. Check that they line up evenly. And put the block off to the side. And bring your arms down by your sides. Going to do a similar movement that we've done in preparing for bridge in the autumn season. Use the wall as you inhale, push the wall away, and let that energy in your feet pressing the wall away lift your butt up away from the ground. See if you can articulate the vertebrae of your spine up. So think of curling your tailbone up so that you can feel each vertebra lift away from the ground. As you do this, lift your arms up and just take your arms as far overhead as works for your shoulders. As you exhale, bring your spine back down. And if you lifted your arms back down. So you're inhaling, pushing the wall away with your feet to lift your spine up, maybe your arms up, and exhaling and bringing your spine back down, your arms back down. Take your time to find this so that you can feel a level of resisting coming down. So again, you're articulating the vertebrae of the spine, both away from the ground and back onto the ground. Instead of flumping down, control the movement. So use the strength in your legs to help you find that. This next time that you come back down, going to keep the arms down by the sides, bring your feet away from the wall, and push the floor away with your hands, and see if you can lift your butt and maybe part of your spine up by lifting your legs up. Don't strain if this doesn't happen. If it works for you to do this, do it a few times. Even if it feels like you're not going anywhere, continue to try engaging your butt up off the ground by lengthening and strengthening your legs and pushing the ground away with your hands, with your arms, keeping your shoulders broad so that you don't press the vertebrae of your neck into the floor. After a few of these, we're going to bend the elbows and tuck them right in next to the ribs. Energize your hands as they come to face each other across your torso. And then press your outer shoulders and elbows into the ground to further feel you create a channel or a tunnel for your neck bones. So instead of having your neck on the ground, you have your shoulders on the ground. And as you press down into your shoulders and your elbows, inhale into your chest, feel your sternum rise. And as you exhale, curl your tailbone up and push the wall away with your feet and find that same articulation of your spine up off the ground. So you're moving into a version of bridge pose with the wall, feeling how much easier this is with the wall than on the floor. And just come up as far as you feel safe, particularly if you have any issues in your neck. This may not work for you at all. So be conscious and be sure that you're breathing. Keep the pressure out of your neck and pressing down through your shoulders instead. If you lift up high enough that you'd like to bring your hands down and interlace your fingers behind your back, then roll your shoulders towards each other. Press your outer shoulders down. If you're feeling your neck is overstretched, lift your chin a little bit. Continue to use your feet against the wall, pushing the wall away to lift up out of the ground. So you have shoulders pressing down and feet pressing down to give you a little bit more lift, less pressure. If you need to, you can walk your feet up higher. And that may be enough. Working with bridge against the wall. If you feel you're ready to take it into the next level and want to work with half shoulder stand, then ease your butt into your hands as you bend your elbows and bring your hands to your sacrum. Continue to press down through your shoulders, through the outer shoulders and elbows. And feel a tilt in your low back. So you're tilting your tailbone towards the floor as opposed to rounding your low back towards the floor. This may be enough here, simply playing with finding the shoulders, the spine, and the pelvis, and keeping your feet on the wall. If you want to take it to the next step, you can play with taking one or both feet away from the wall. The trick with half shoulder stand is finding only the length in your legs that doesn't compromise the curve in your low back. And with finding that curve in your low back when you're upside down. So again, feel that you're tilting your tail, your sacrum, into your hands. If that's too much pressure on your wrists, emphasize pressing your shoulders down. And then only finding the length in your legs that works for you without changing your low back. Stay here as long as it feels comfortable for you. Continue to breathe. Finding the angle of your legs in space that minimizes that pressure in your wrists. So you may need to take your feet closer to your head or bend your knees a little bit. If you are still in half shoulder stand, you haven't come out of bridge, bring your fingertips back to the floor, your feet back to the wall, and use the pressure in both your hands and your feet to roll your spine back down. It may be that you can go directly into this inverted leg posture where you're resting your sacrum on the block or on a blanket, which would be a little bit more comfortable. You may even want to put a blanket on top of the block. Or it may be that you need to roll off, get your block, and come back. You're bringing your sacrum to rest a little bit higher up on the lowest level of the block and maybe also a blanket, and your legs to rest against the wall. Your arms can be by your sides, out from your shoulders or overhead. Find where it feels comfortable. This posture in itself can be a great practice. You don't necessarily need to have the block, but it helps to release the blood flow through the pelvis and back up to the heart to have that slight elevation. And this is a resting pose, so let your breath settle out so it softens. You may need to play a little bit with how close or far you are from the wall, that the backs of your knees feel good, you feel stable, and you can let go. Ease your way out of this. If your arms are overhead, bring them down. Gather up the block and put it off to the side. And as you settle your sacrum and low back onto the ground, bend your knees and take them out to the sides as you bring the soles of your feet together. So we're doing bound angle with the wall. And just like all of the wall postures, using the wall for feedback. So if you've edged away from the wall, scoot yourself back towards the wall so that you feel both sits bones, both butt cheeks, firmly and evenly on the wall. And then check that your feet are even, that your toes line up, your heels line up. And bring your hands to your inner knees or thighs and press your knees or thighs towards the wall just to the point where you can breathe into that inner thigh stretch. Notice when you start to deepen into that inner thigh stretch, if anything changes in your sits bones. See if you can feel that your sits bones remain even on the wall and your waists are even. Give that another breath. And then if you can reach your feet, feel free to take a hold of your feet and start to open your big toes away from one another. And notice how that change in the angle of the feet affects your knees and your hips. Once you've found where your feet and your knees and your hips are relatively comfortable and supported, then take your arms out shoulder level and let this be another resting pose. Feeling how you're supported by the wall and by the floor. So notice how that feels to be contained. Noticing any area where you're active and holding up or holding on. And experimenting with letting go into this container. To transition out of this posture, use your hands to gather your knees up, bring them together, and you may want to pause in tucked pose for a breath or so and take your breath into your belly, into your thighs. When you feel ready to transition back onto your feet and into your day, take your arms out to the sides and roll your legs over to one side. And then over to the other side. So you're creating a little bit of a twist. You can use your hands to keep you from going too far. Finding where that feels good in your back. Just taking a few rolls side to side. to reawaken your spine. And then when you're ready to come up fully, let your legs come to the ground off to the side and push the ground away to come up. Find where you can sit comfortably tall. To conclude your practice, lift your arms up overhead. As you exhale, draw down along your midline. Acknowledge yourself and anyone else you're practicing with. Namaste.